Good evening. I'm hereby calling to order the June 12th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Balestria. Mr. DeJohn.
Here.
Mr. Mano.
Here.
Mr. Monaco.
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Here.
Mrs. Snyder.
Here.
Mrs. Teresi.
Here.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The purpose of this evening's meeting is to provide an update regarding the Aquatic and Community Center project. Specifically, per Mr. Ward's memo, we will be discussing pool pricing, membership eligibility, the widening and extension of the sidewalk on the south side of Marsall, and signage for the facility, including the digital monument sign. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mr. Ward to begin this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to start right away with the expansion and widening of the sidewalk. So we came with an original cost of $42,000 to widen and then extend the sidewalk from Sunningdale to Woodrow. That $42,000 price includes an 8-foot concrete path from Sunningdale to the lot line, the Polo lot line, and then changing from concrete to asphalt for the remainder. We got some feedback from City Council that they would like to see the whole sidewalk be 8 feet in concrete, and so we got that pricing, and that came in at $110,000 for that pricing. In addition to that, just recently, we have to do some engineering on that path. There are some manhole covers that need to either rise or lower, and down at the Woodrow location where it crosses over a crosswalk, there's some grading issues, so it might mean we would have to put a retaining wall up. At minimum, we have to do some engineering and potentially also some work as well. So, Chris, if you want to, Chris is going to go through this.
Hi, good evening. I prepared 3 drawings that show some of the issues that we face. One is the utilities, and we show 3 areas, A, B, and C, that are along this pathway for the 8-foot concrete wide pathway, the sidewalk. And you see in the images below, you'll see where I kind of indicate the 8-foot pathway in each of the images sort of dashed in red. This is sort of defining the detailed scope. So we have A, B, and C areas where we have manhole covers and water pipe connections and different items that we need to address. Hopefully, the items you see in B, or the photograph in B, those will be hopefully just they're kind of raised up already. They'll be at the sidewalk grade. But the sewer in A, and perhaps the water manhole cover in C would probably need to be raised up to get to a sidewalk grade. But all that needs to be sort of verified, vetted, and designed in this layout. The next diagram is the cross sections of all the intersections, and we have A, B, C, D, E, all these different conditions. One is at the end of Sunningdale, where we have to marry up to the handicap ramp that goes down to the road. And then we go in front of the property of, what's the resident? Polo resident. And you'll see in picture B of that intersection where the right-of-way is actually designated by a score line in their sidewalk, but we would go across their current driveway. And then continue on to C, which is the main entrance to our site, to the new aquatic center. One side of the curb, the west side of the curb, is not constructed yet, and if this went ahead, could kind of maybe be incorporated now instead of having to build the curb and then demo it to put a ramp in later. The other side, the the other side of that apron already has the curb in image C that we'd have to cut into because it was just recently poured. And then D is the other entrance to the parking lot that would have to be modified, 2 curbs there as well. And at E, which is the service drive, it's flush right there, so the sidewalk would marry up right with the paving, and there'd be no curb cuts there. It's a 0 curb now. And F is right at the intersection of Woodrow, where a crosswalk would go across the road. And we may need a retaining wall where I've indicated in the black dashed line. So this kind of shows those points. The next one are the power poles that are existing for the telephone, and these are all the different light poles. And we wanted to make sure that we're just sort of passing by the light poles on maybe about 6 to 8 inches past the light poles, then do the 8-foot walk. And we have 4 areas where we have that they're in the yellow color, items 2, 4, 6, and 7, where there are guide wires that stabilize the poles. And in all of those cases, you get really a minimum of 8 feet to 10 feet clear. So there's no issue with the 8-foot walk, a bike rider or anyone to, get hit by those. So they're up high enough. So this was sort of to identify all the kind of its surgical kind of insertion of this 8-foot sidewalk all the way, but there really aren't any obstacles that we see that cause major issues with it. And if this got approved, we would do engineering drawings to complete the details of it.
I do have a question for you. So in number 2, where the light poles are,
Yeah.
so the sidewalk is kind of close to the parking lot. On the inside, there's a curb. Do you see that area? So is that parking along that inside, or is that
The
a
only
driving?
parking, if you look at image 4, bottom left, that is where the sidewalk is adjacent to our new parking lot. The bottom left number 4. It is 20 feet away, the parking from the curb. I don't know the location you're talking about where there's the playground is there.
No, not, next to it. You see where the,
Talking about number 2, the second one in?
okay, yeah. So I'm just referring to the area where there's parking on the other side, like your actual
Oh,
parking
I'm
lot.
with you, sorry, thank
So if you're walking sidewalk, and I don't remember what the parking looks like, where it's striped inside the actual parking lot. I was just making sure that that's a driveway and not a parking along facing Marsal, because there'd be pedestrians right there walking. You see what I'm saying?
There's a
Like,
curb there.
there's a curb, but is it head-in parking or facing Marsal, the parking? It's hard to explain because I can't,
Yeah, you can't drive there. There's a curb, you're talking about the Aquatic and Community Center parking lot.
Right.
Has a curb. From that curb to the curb of Marsal is 20 feet.
okay.
So
So
there
that
would be a
8 of
buffer
that-
of 8 feet or more.
That's what I just wanted to know, that there was enough distance, because it looks really tight in there, so,
It's not as tight as you would think. It's about, 6 to 8 feet of a buffer still.
okay, good. I just worry about people pulling in, people walking,
good-
and,
good
like, I
point,
know
yeah.
at some of our other storefronts, we make sure that there's bollards and things to prevent people getting hit. So I
If this
just wanna make
sidewalk
sure.
was any closer to that parking lot, it wouldn't work because of the guide wires and thing. It's fitting just where it has to go, and
Okay.
it should work.
It's just a safety concern, that's all. Thank you. Mrs. Tressi?
Mr. Trotta, is the engineering cost included in that $110,000?
It is not.
And do we have an estimate on what that cost is going to be?
We think that could be $5,500 to $6,000 for that.
And is that the only cost? Or do you have to do something with the catch base?
There may be some additional surveying that needs to be done. So my recommendation to Sean was to have a placeholder of $9,000 to $10,000 for both of those items and work within that budget.
Thank you.
Mr. DeJohn?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Trotta, how wide are our sidewalks now? 4 foot in our city?
I don't actually know the number, but I would think they're at least,
I think they're 5, aren't they?
I thought they were wider than 4, but they could be.
5 feet.
So 5 feet.
5 feet.
Might be.
Mostly
So
5 feet.
5 foot. So why did we want to go all the way to 8 foot? I would think, 6 foot would be adequate for two people to ride by or walk by one another.
Sean, why don't you answer that?
Yeah, so that facility is just going to have a lot of traffic. It's no longer a baseball field 3 months out of the year, but it'll be 12 months that realistically, especially this winter, people could walk there, and people do walk. And so when you look at everything, walking dogs, riding bicycles, whatever, just giving more room in a place that we know we're going to have a lot of foot traffic seemed to be a good idea.
I was just looking at, maybe cutting down the cost a little bit by going from 8 foot to 6 foot. Probably could save a considerable amount of money, especially if we're going to go with concrete.
Yeah, that was the 8 foot was not my decision. I think it makes it more generous and convenient, but there could be moments of that walk that are less than that. But I know there was just the desire to have it at 8 foot, just kind of more like a walking path width, a little bit more generous, but there's nothing magic about the 8 foot.
Madam President, if I could?
Mayor.
Well, in the discussions we had about it, considering that was where we wanted to push all the pedestrian traffic was to the south side of Marsal, because we would like to keep people from those parking lot, going behind the cars that are actually parked on the north side of Marsal. We're trying to push everybody over to the north side, to the south side. So the idea, excuse me, was to make it as wide as possible, and thinking that was going to be where most of the traffic, pedestrian and kids on bicycles and things would probably be getting there. So yeah, wanted to avoid, that situation there and getting as many people to cross, and with some updated crosswalks, and get them out of that potentially hazardous situation there. That was the reason we figured maybe 8 foot was a little better.
Mrs. Tressi?
Thanks. And thank you, Mr. Smith, for the last time I mentioned the cars that were backed in there. The next morning, they were all, instead of pulling in, they were all backed in the day after our council meeting. So I don't know how you managed that, but it was really nice to see them, that they backed in so they could see who would be in front of them when they were pulling out. That was,
We try to reinforce that. Doesn't always happen, but most of the time it does.
but most of the time it does. Yes, and I thank you, because I had complaints from the residents about that big blue truck backing up and hitting someone with a little dog or a child. So my question is, you've had these meetings on Wednesday for how long now? Did this subject ever come up about putting in a sidewalk on the south side? Knowing that we had 162 parking spaces at the Aquatic Center, and you knew they would have to park here and at the tennis courts. Was there, in your meetings, was there ever a conversation that, gosh gee whiz, maybe we should think about putting a sidewalk on the south side? I know they talked about like a crosswalk, but you were going to have a crosswalk go across by Woodhurst, but they were going to have to walk in the grass.
Mrs. Tressi,
what?
I remember at one of our committee of the whole meetings, we talked a long time ago about putting a sidewalk over there. It should be in the minutes. Remember, from the very beginning, we talked about a sidewalk because I asked about Mrs. Polo's property, her not having a sidewalk. And we talked about the sidewalk a long time ago.
I don't remember them ever
So that
discussing it or
sidewalk,
putting
that
it
sidewalk
into the
is in,
package.
that sidewalk is in the drawings, a 6-foot sidewalk from the corner of Sunningdale to our project. That was in the project. This is the extension of it going further. We were just doing the minimum needed, once again, cost, right? minimum needed to facilitate this project from taking people from the park across the way to come south and collect them and go into our project. That was the extent of our scope. It was this additional idea, which is great, if you have the dollars to take it further.
Thanks.
Mr. Monaco?
Thank you. Mr. Trotter, I guess I have the same question that Gail posed. Why did we decide now that we need wider sidewalk? That's the first question. Why was not included in the original plan? We paid the consultant, architect, and engineer to help us in this. Why widening of on the west end when most of the pedestrian and bicycle traffic will be coming from the east, especially from the Drake? And secondly, if you look at any sidewalk specs anywhere leading up to schools, parks, and sporting complex, they all must be 8 feet wide. So why did you draw 6 feet when they're required to be 8 feet wide?
Madam Chair, if I could, we discussed, there was always a sidewalk there, Mr. Monaco, but in discussion, excuse me, we thought that extending it to Woodrow would be better and widening it would be better. That was after the architect, our design specialists, as you say, who helped us with this, they came up with their ideas, and after some discussion, we decided we would bring it to council saying, hey, let's make it a little wider and let's make it a little farther. That was how that conversation started. As I said, it was also for safety reasons to push them away from the north side to the south side.
Mr. Mano, do you have any questions or about this subject, Mrs. Sabetta?
I would just make a comment on the sidewalk. I'm glad that it's cement. And Orange is, all of their right-of-way sidewalks around their developments now are 10 feet. They are 10 feet. That's for double strollers, people walking with dogs, bikes. I noticed it right away when it started popping up. So I think 6 feet would not be enough. In my opinion, it would not be enough.
So I have a quick question. Is there a possible way that we can take the sidewalk, the cost, is there's like a $68,000 difference in the cost of the asphalt versus the concrete. Is there a way that we can use the 2024 sidewalk program and, and maybe push it up to this year and put the cost towards the sidewalk that we need in this area, towards the next year's sidewalk program? So that we wouldn't be using from these funds, but, technically, it's still from the same
Right.
income.
I was pausing and hesitating for a moment just to figure out the timing of that. But yes, we should have enough in there this year to cover that, as long as we remember next year when we go out to bid that it's, the full 200,000 would not be available.
And then this project for the sidewalk was supposed to be done within 4 years or 5 years throughout the community? The whole program.
Well, we were going to do the
Yeah.
city, but then we were starting back over at the beginning. It was not like it was 5 years and it was over. We knew it would have to be
Start back over
a
again.
continuing process. Hopefully not as many in that second go-round as the first round, but we knew it would be a continuing process.
Okay. It's just a thought. Mr. Mano?
I look at this whole thing as a safety issue. You are going to have a preponderance of traffic there, kids on bikes, stuff like that. And from that standpoint, I think that's, it's a safety issue. Now, Mr. Balestrella had mentioned that he would be willing to do something with the sidewalk program to support this and do some revisions for the next year. on the sidewalk program. He chairs that, I guess, and he felt that he would have the dollars to work with.
Mr. DeJohn?
Well, if we're gonna start taking that money from the sidewalk program and diverting it to this, then I guess we can finish sidewalks on Gates Mills Boulevard and on Cedar, so we can connect the whole city together with sidewalks. Right now, they don't have any sidewalks, and, you know, our goal is to connect the whole city with sidewalks, so I think then we should consider taking the money out of there and putting sidewalks on those streets. I
Madam
think you're
Chair, if
opening
I
up a
could?
can of worms if you do that, though.
Well, yeah, Madam Chair, if I could, and I mean, that's technically a good point, but everybody else in the city has paid for their sidewalks, one way or the other. This is not a residential piece of property that we're adding sidewalks to. It's owned by the city. So I think there is a little bit of a difference there, but I see where you can be opening up a can of worms there. But also, go ahead, Mrs. Fink.
If I may, Mr. Balestre had also questioned whether or not we could use any of our remaining ARPA monies towards this. Seeing as this would be an area that would be used by the entire community because of the proximity to the center, I think that would be a very allowable purpose.
And there's enough in the fund for that.
Yes, there is.
Are there any additional comments or questions? Okay, did you want to go on to the next subject? Sean?
Yes. So the next subject is signage. So we are going to come to you at the June 26th council meeting with legislation for signage. So we wanted to get that information to you now and start talking about it. So there's 4 parts to that. That includes digital signs, exterior signage, interior signage, and then pool signage. I guess that's exterior, but we're just calling it's a different type of signage than the exterior building signage. So, I don't know if you want to, on the graphic in front of you is, we'll start with the digital signage. And as you can see in the pink there, that's the proposed location of the signage.
What we're looking to do is a digital sign that's 3 feet by 8 feet long. That's just the sign cabinet itself. And we would place it on a 4-course high brick base with a cast stone cap. So this would match the brick on the building, the dark brick on the building. And it would also match sort of the low wall that we've created upon the entrance. And this, overall dimensions, it's coming, getting around 9 feet by 5 feet high is per zoning, the maximum height for a ground sign. So we meet all those requirements. We're looking at a black cabinet around the sign, so it kind of matches the building itself with the black window frames. And it's pretty simple structure. The image to the right is a side view of it, so it's a very slender, long sign that's 8 feet long. And the view up on top is a top-down view. The previous digital sign was explored on whether it could be reused, and it could not. And everyone came out to the site, they were testing it, hooked it up, and it was just not able to be reused. So we did really look into trying to save that sign. And of course, this sign is of a higher quality, more DPI, dots per inch, and is a modernized sign. Sean, where is this controlled by? This is back at the, in the building?
This would be controlled in the building, yes, correct.
Where would it be located? Because I can't see.
Go back up. Right where that arrow's pointing on the front on Marsal. It's a double-face sign, so it has digital on both sides. depending which direction you're coming from, you will see the content.
And what was the cost of this?
We are waiting for pricing. That, I'm gonna have that to you for next council meeting. We're kind of prepping you as to what, all the different signage so you can think about it, but, we're still waiting for that pricing to come in. This will all be state term pricing.
So this was not part of the original plan, because we thought we were going to use the old one, correct?
Correct.
We
Okay.
thought we were gonna use the old one, correct, yes.
Okay. Any questions from council? Mr. DeJohn?
Yeah, other than, my only comment is I'm very disappointed that we didn't hire professionals to take the other sign down, so it now worked and we could have used it in this situation. Whether it's, old technology or not, it still worked fine. Every time I went by the community center there, it was working fine. So I'm just disappointed. It just seems to me like government waste, but I guess it's water over the dam now. Thanks.
Mrs. Tressi?
I'm sorry, I missed who's going to control the sign and the message that will,
Control that from the building,
from your building or from this building?
from the aquatic and community.
Right from the Aquatic Center.
Anything further? Okay, thank you, Sean.
We'll move on to exterior signage now.
Stressful.
So we have planned 4 exterior signs. At this point, we had additional locations, but we scaled it back to these 4 locations based on not knowing the naming of the buildings and certain aspects of that component. We limited it to off the orange designation you see there on 271. It would say this, and we'll show you the graphics in a second, it'll say the city of Mayfield Heights in big letters. So it really is a marker, an identifier of this building and sort of a gateway of the community that you're passing through. The sign on the north that's in that circle, there's a low wall, and it'll just be a ground sign. We're adding some raised letters that say, once again, the city of Mayfield Heights, just in letters that wraps around that feature. The 2 other signs are non-illuminated signs that mount to the facade, the brick facade, and it's the logo of Mayfield Heights just in like a brushed aluminum color. Let's show those images. So this is the ground sign, City of Mayfield Heights, upper, lower for the City of, cursive, and then Mayfield Heights. And it follows your font, the font and everything. And you see the circle above, or the cross-section above where it shows it in plan, how it's that curved entryway, right where that clock is going to be located in the flagpole and all that. A very, very nominal sign, but at least it kind of is a marker off of Marsol, what the facility is. And then this is one location. This is on the multi-purpose building facing when you're driving in to the canopy. You'll see this. This is the logo for the city of Mayfield Heights as a brushed aluminum lettering. And this is a view from the pool deck. There's also sort of that outdoor patio that we have. There's also a wall there that would have this logo on as well. So as you're at the pool, you can identify that it's, the city's organization here. And then on the building, this is facing 271, parallel with 271, City of Mayfield Heights. Lowercase, upper, lower for City of, cursive, or italic, and then Mayfield Heights, bold letters. These are illuminated letters, so daytime or nighttime, it'll once again be a great, marker for the city. In the future, if there's additional logo or naming or whatever, it could be, added on, or additional could be provided. We had to get the power located in the walls now, so we place them in all the, the locations where we believe that they'll be, where these signs are, or a future sign would be. But right now, those 4 locations are the only places where we're proposing signs.
Mrs. Tressi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So if the logo, so we've changed our logo from what it was to the new one we have today. If it were to change again, what will happen to the facade?
You could, because if they're on, it's raised off the facade with little pins.
Oh, so it's,
But so you'd have to remove those, and those typically go into the grout joints of the brick, and then it would need to be patched and repaired.
thank you.
And that's why we didn't really include it up, we kept it simple on the buildings and the ground, so it's very, just the basic name, that's it.
Chair?
Mr. Monaco.
Just a question about the height of the sign. It seems to me like the lettering is less than 3 feet in height from the ground. Isn't that too low to be visible?
For this sign,
Yeah.
this sign is up 30-some feet up in the air. This is a parapet.
No, I'm talking about the other two. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the other one that's on the ground, it is low. You're right, it's a low wall. We're keeping the landscape. We raised it up a little bit from what we originally had. There's still a couple courses of brick that you're not seeing in that, but it is low, right? And there's about a 12-inch of black brick. Then it's that field of yellow brick where the sign is. So it is raised up, and we have low plantings in front. But that has to be kept trim to see the sign.
That's my point. I mean, if we're doing it, well, we make it a little higher so that you can have some nice vegetation in the front.
Well, it's treated as a bench as well, so it's a nice feature, so it's a multi-purpose. You have it higher. We wanted to make sure you see the clock and people sitting there and not have it as a wall. It's just a nice low wall. It's built now, so it's there. But
It's already built?
It's already built.
the
now,
wall
yes.
is, the wall has been built for a long while, yes.
Unbelievable.
Well, the low wall, let's say that this is a proposition. You don't have to have this signage on there. My intent was that it was a nice feature to accent the circle where the is, and the idea is to put the sign on this low wall. You can have the low wall without the sign if you don't want it. It just was a nice feature. When you come in, drive in, you see it right there. And it's at eye level so that when you're driving your car, it's right there. It's not up higher. And we also have the digital sign. If you have that too tall, then it would block the digital sign, so.
I just wanted to ask, I must have missed the color. Is it lighted in black? Like the color is black when it's not lit, the illuminated ones?
This one, we have to light it.
Right.
Or we don't have to, but we'd like to, and we'll have external lights on the ground that will shine up and hit those
Okay.
letters.
And then the other one with the logo, is it going to be colored like the logo, or is it silver?
No, it's going to be brushed nickel.
Brushed nickel, okay.
It
I
won't
couldn't-
have all the blue, or the blue and the green and all that. It will not have that.
Okay, just the brushed nickel. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Mayor, did you have a question?
Yeah, no, Madam Chair, just for clarification, this bench has always been there. Chris is just showing us a sign that he's looking, for input on from council. So that has always been a feature that's been there and has been included in our plan. So it shouldn't be shocking to Mr. Monaco.
Okay.
Yeah, respond.
Mr. Monaco?
What's shocking, it's already built. This is the shocking part. of it.
plan, it's been in the plan.
We didn't build the sign yet. That's what we're here to talk about, is if you want words on it or not. The other is a architectural low wall. That's all it is. It's just an additional idea to have this there if you would like it or not.
Okay, I apologize. I thought that you said it was already built. The sign was already.
The low
bench is-
wall
The bench is already built.
The sign is not, no, we came before you to
I thought
present.
the sign itself was already built.
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I relayed that, but
Okay, thank you.
Mr. DeJohn?
Thank you. Are we keeping the clock? Where?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from council? Okay, thank you.
All right, so that was the exterior signage. We're going to quickly move to interior signage.
it's fine. So the drawings here are the current drawings of what room signs and directional signs could look like. And the scheme was really to match the current color scheme of the walnut finishes in the building. And then have, once again, the lettering would be sort of that brushed nickel look to it. And we have just a wide variety of signs. Some are code-related, are required at the restrooms. Others are occupancy calculations or occupancy listing for, the meeting rooms, things like that. And then room designation signs. And this, just some directional sign when you come in the building that we would have, to send you in the right direction. Especially when you come into the vestibule, you need to know to go to the gym this direction, or you go through the doors to the community center. Are there more to? And there are options like, for example, that map that is so that it relates to the pool, and it's pretty conservative. We're not doing anything too extraordinary here from a design standpoint.
Mrs. Tressi?
And Mr. Trotter, all of these signs are in the budget?
Yeah, that's what we have we allotted in our soft costs or in addition to the construction budget for signage, wayfinding, for a lot of the other kitchen equipment. We've allotted for the exterior building signs dollars and for the interior. And once we get an okay, we're looking to price, on the design, we're looking to price it. But from the example of the exterior building signs, we're doing less signage than we initially had, so we'll get some savings there. And then the interior, I think we had a $50,000 budget for that, and we're working within that budget.
Thank you.
There are a couple grander signs in the interiors that were part of our drawings that introduced the rec department and the fitness room. They were sort of large letters and graphics and stuff. And we were just talking today about revisiting that, whether to do them or not, because there are some opportunities here that we could, save some money, and we probably should. And that way we can appropriate it towards other items or savings back.
Thank you.
Anything further from council? Okay, thank you.
And then the final piece of signage would be what's going to start out as temporary signage just to get occupancy permit in the pool, but will ultimately be permanent signage. And that's just the pool rules in the diving area, the general pool rules, the little tot area, where you can eat, those type of rules. So those will be also included. But initially, that'll be temporary signage just to get our temporary occupancy. So.
And we did have an additional sign or two that labeled like concessions that we were going to put on the eyebrow of the canopy that sticks out over the concession. And like I said, today we even talked about that and said with the design of the pool deck, you can literally see everything on the pool deck. And you can see where the concession is and the picnic pavilion is very obvious. So once again, trying to find areas where we can not do as much as we initially thought we needed to do. It's pretty intuitive. And then it was decided that at a later time, if there is some confusion, or live in it for a while, and what are the questions if there's then you add some additional signage once you live in it and know what the deficiencies in wayfinding are, if there are any. So that's the approach we'd like to suggest doing. Less is more on this.
Mr. Monaco?
Thank you. Sean, what about signs on the slide? I mean, I'm sure you're going to need some slide at the base of the slide, probably on top.
Yeah, so those signs actually come from the slide manufacturer, so they will be getting us signs.
Okay.
Yeah, their list of regulations that they need.
Mrs. Tressi?
I don't know if this is really for Mr. Trotta or Sean, but are you still looking at opening June 30th?
That's a good segue. That's a great segue.
Smith just jumped up.
Good segue.
Madam President, he's not done with.
Oh, the sign was not done.
So what I'd like to do is go through a
Oh.
few progress photos,
Okay.
and then I'll talk schedule on that. I could, so.
And then when,
Oh, go ahead.
and then when you're done, you have to go with the pool pricing.
Yes, so we have 20 minutes to get through
Yes.
schedule update and full pricing.
I'll go
Sorry.
quick.
Thank you.
So these are some drone photos. This is taken from Marsal. So you're looking from north to south. And you can see the slides are about 2/3 up. We are waiting for some more slide material to show up. It started showing up this past Friday. We got some more today, so they're assembling it in the parking lot across the street, and they're taking it over. We did not get the opportunity to start that install on the wide track slide today because the winds were so high, we couldn't use the crane that we needed to do that. But you can see that little kidney-shaped thing, that's the north pool A. And then looking further south, that's the pool B in the south. You can see that kind of baseball field shaped thing and the squares and what have you. So all that's poured with concrete. So kind of where you see towards the north or bottom of the photos is where we still need to pour concrete. So what they're doing is they're getting their stone in and they're starting to prep that. We still need to leave a little channel to get to that area to finish installing the slides. And then you can see the building. Now those dark areas, that's got our vapor barrier on it, and that lower dark area is actually the glass is all in on that. It's a little hard to see, but in those areas, the glass is in, and then kind of in this area here, that's where the fire pits is, so you can see that's built, and then this is all curbed out and landscaped. There's actually plantings and everything in there now. So really, we've got, the big push is to finish the slides. There's been a huge effort inside the pool itself. There's a lot of tile in there. And we've had almost 20 tilers a day in there for 3 weeks now doing all this tile. And again, this weather today did not help at all. And looking at the rest of the week, you know, it's putting a little strain on our schedule, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But they're doing really well moving forward. Let's see. So this is kind of top down, gives you, again, a little bit more perspective, but you can see a lot of the concrete's poured now. And so what we'll do is once all the tile's done, they come in and they plaster it, and they actually plaster the entire pools in 2 days. We have to do it because after that 2-day plaster period, we have to get water in the pool, and the plaster actually cures under the water. So that part will go extremely quick once we get the tile done over the next couple of weeks here. This is just on the top of that slide tower looking down. Let's see here. And then again, looking at that slide tower, north to south, that blue track slide or the 4 racing lane slides not in yet. And that's what's gonna start here tomorrow. But then we won't get other pieces until the beginning of July for that one.
Can I say something on that slide?
Yeah. Want me to go back?
Yeah, and then when you see see that green portion in the gray slide, those are translucent pieces, and we strategically placed in the green slide and in the gray slide these translucent pieces, so when you're going down the dark tunnel, it brightens up every time there's a turn. So we did that just in case you were wondering, so it's a little safer. You can predict what's coming up to you and not be jostled back and forth too much without knowing it's happening.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat feature that the slide guys went through with us, so. This is the maintenance building, I guess, or the storage facility that's up and pretty much done. We're gonna get the doors in this week, and then there's a little divider wall down the middle, so that's shaping up.
Can I intercept for just a minute? I wanted to talk about that for a minute. So on the renderings, the color of this was a different color. So we have a lot of people complaining about that. It was like a brownish color.
Okay, yeah, I don't recall.
Mr. Chada,
I
maybe?
believe that was the way the sun, when you render a model, the way you have the sun, it makes certain features look darker. It was, the intention was never for it to be dark, because it's a building, it's a metal roof, and you wouldn't have a dark color, because it would absorb all the heat from the
Right.
sun. So you want it to be this color to reflect, but I could understand how they looked at the rendering and thought it
Yes.
was
I've had
darker.
some calls about that, and then it went on social media that that wasn't the color, you know, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Okay. So it's because of the sun, the way the picture was taken?
No, when we do a rendering, if the sun was at the other angle and hit it, it would look lighter.
Right.
Like shadowing.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's just the way metal looks. And on our building, the metal panels that we have will change colors during the day, depending on the sun. They'll look really light like that, and sometimes they'll look almost dark gray. It's just regardless of the color of this, they would have seen this. And in fact, I believe this will be hid more against the sky than a dark structure, so.
So I know I'm fast forwarding, but in our meeting this evening, if we were to pass the new metal roof for the pavilion, would it be this color? Or would it be the
It'll be
darker
this-
color?
It's this color. But that's kind of a gabled
Flat.
roof, and it's just, this one kind of rolls all the way down the side, so you see it more.
Okay.
The other is a flatter gable that you'll see a little bit, but it's to match this as well. And this was to match all the panels on the building are this color as well.
Okay.
And there are higher shapes than this on our building that they will see anyhow as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I knew we were talking about that.
Sure.
Okay.
No, I understand. This is looking from the maintenance facility west towards the building. So you can see a lot of plantings and stuff in the detention ponds. This is all asphalt that we're starting to clean because we're gonna put the top course on soon over the next couple of weeks. And then you can see the gym, the main entrance in here. All this has glass in it. It's hard to tell from the picture. And what's kind of behind all this is the metal panel itself going up. That takes quite some time to get up. And then, why it's doing that. This is the maintenance yard, so you can see that fence is up. It's all landscaped. That top right corner, you can see where you see that kind of checkerboard. That's the final concrete that was done a week or so ago. And so essentially, we're done at that maintenance facility. And then this is just kind of the front drive of that maintenance facility. Again, you can see the entrance and all that. So just from a schedule standpoint, we've kind of had this self-imposed goal of turning the pools over on 6/30, which is the Friday before July 4th. With kind of the manufacturing delay in the slides and the weather that we expect this week and not being able to facilitate that full tile install, we're looking at that 7/7 date, which is, a week later than that, or the weekend of the 4th, but that Friday. Because even when we finish, we have to get inspections from 3 entities: Ohio Department of Health, Cuyahoga County Department of Health, and actually the Department of Agriculture has to inspect that blue track slide. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. Not that we're, backing off of that or slowing anything down. We still got a lot of people out there on a day-to-day basis, and we've been working Saturdays, and the slide guys have actually been working a lot of the Sundays to get all that up, and we can. So we're keeping on pushing. Now that's the pools, okay? The building itself, we're looking at still that end of August date for the building. Although the building is well progressed, and I probably should have put some more pictures in there. I'll get some pictures for you the next time. But the gym is essentially done. It's painted out. All the athletic accommodations are up. We got to put the sound panels in and the floor, and that's pretty much it. The main conference rooms in there, those are looking really good. They're finishing sanding, and we'll paint those out soon. And then we got to do flooring. The kitchen's looking great. We're waiting for kitchen equipment to show up, but everything's ready for it. So really, it's just focusing on that main corridor along that radius and doing the finished walls and getting the tile down in there. So all that's kind of coming together nicely to complement the pool and all that. So I don't know if there's any questions.
Mrs. Tressi.
Yeah, I do have a question. What was it? Can you open the pool and still have the remainder of this aquatic center be a construction site? Will OSHA go along with that?
Yeah, so we feel confident that absolutely, yes, we can do that. We've talked to all the jurisdictions about that. We've talked to the building inspectors and everything. And so our big push is to get everything done on the inside towards the pool. And then in the area we call G, or the pool building on that north side, that has all of the locker rooms, the concessions and all that, that'll be done for use by the patrons for for that. The only thing that we won't have on that building is the metal panel, so we would come back at the end of the season and do that metal panel. But yeah, we've vetted that with everybody, and it'll be safe for occupants, including the parking that we'll have sectioned off for use by the patrons and construction, because we won't have the magnitude of construction trades there when we turn the pools over. It'll be significantly less, and they'll be in the back and away from things. So I can confidently say that, yes. And it's something that we're used to doing all the time in phase projects and hospitals and stuff like that, so.
And with all the overtime and the Saturdays, and I think Mr. Balestria said you were working like 5 o'clock in the morning or something. Is all of that extra additional labor, is that all included in your price?
It's stuff that we contemplated for the most part up front is within our contract currently.
It is. Good. Thank you.
And then the park will be done after this, correct? Because they're,
So, yeah, good question, the playground, right? So
playground.
due to just availability of the playground installers, and we've been coordinating with them quite a bit, they're looking to come, I think it was the beginning of that third week in July, and start theirs. So we'll get most of the fencing around there to protect the pool and all that, and then when they show up, they've got, I think, 3 weeks to do a lot of their stuff. So they would be in end of July,
Beginning of
first week into
August.
August, somewhere in there.
okay.
And then that'd be good timing, because we gotta leave, we've been talking about sidewalks. There's sections of sidewalk that we have to leave out for them.
Yeah,
So we've been very conscious about that from a logistics standpoint, making sure that we can facilitate that circulation from the north side of the road to the south and keep everybody separate, so.
okay. Thank you. Mr. DeJohn?
Thank you. So there'll be sidewalk, can you put that photo back up, please? Okay, will there be sidewalk going across this driveway, right, and to that stop sign?
Oh, the last one? No, there will not be sidewalk along here. No.
The sidewalk goes through that.
It only goes to the driveway, the sidewalk?
Not, and maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, but at the time that the pool opens or anything, no.
No, I'm asking if we approve the sidewalk tonight, will it,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes. Yes, it would come across here, and then I think it cuts across right here, if I recall.
You don't have to build sidewalk for that portion. It might be striped, but not.
On the drive.
Oh, yeah.
correct, I understand that, but
Yeah.
it's past the drive, further east.
Yeah, it goes right to this intersection here, up here.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. Thank you so much for going over that with
Up
us.
17 minutes.
Now you have 3 minutes.
Thanks. All right, so last but not least is the pool pricing. You have a sheet in front of you. Real quick, the top pricing is Draga Pool from last year. The second rung is the proposed pricing for this year. Look at the blue, after 7-9, that's kind of we do a first half, second half pricing typically, and so that's what we're suggesting is the pricing in the blue there. So for a family resident, or a family pass, it would be $110 for a resident, $170 for a school district resident, and so forth. If you chose not to buy a pass and you went to a daily admission, the rate would be $7 for a resident or $10 for a school district resident. We have Parkview Pool and Highland Heights pricing in there. Our pricing is very comparable to Parkview Pool.
Madam President.
Mr. DeJohn?
So Sean, I see for swim lessons, you have non-resident and resident, but then for pool, you have resident and school district. Now, what if my cousin Vinny from Little Italy wants to come up here and swim? Is he considered, a non-resident, and you won't let him in? And
Sure
if you
guest.
can, how will you be able to
So,
verify?
yeah, I'm sorry, I should have taken that off. We're most likely not going to offer swim lessons this year. public swim lessons. We'll offer swim lessons through day camp, and we'll offer private lessons, but because we just didn't know the timing of everything, we are not offering swim lessons, the public swim lessons this year.
But what about swimming?
So swimming, if you turn to the next page, our suggestion for eligibility of the pool is for residents of the school district.
And how would you monitor that?
So people are going to have to bring they're going to have to bring proof of residency, so a photo ID and gas or electric bill.
So I can't bring my cousin Vinny from Little Italy.
So if you go down to the, where is that at? Yeah, the
Guest
guest
pass, under
pass.
season
Oh, there it
pass.
is. The guest pass, there's an opportunity for you to bring your cousin Vinny on a guest pass situation.
Where's that?
$5 per person.
And Sean, is there a possible way that we
We just
can,
wouldn't want you to bring the whole Vinny clan with you, 15, 18 with you, but you could bring up to 4.
can we offer possibly selling those guest passes, like 6, 6 passes per person? I was telling you how the
Like
village
a
did
punch
that.
pass?
Like a punch pass.
Yes,
Yeah.
we could do that, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Do,
Perfect.
you could buy in bulk, say 10 or 12 passes, and then use them here and there with, we wouldn't want you to use them all at once. But yeah,
And did you reach out to the school to see if the kids have their passes, or their IDs, their school IDs to use?
So if they do have a school ID, we'll take that. If not, we'll take a report card.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Thank you. Sean, how do these numbers compare with Beechwood, Mayfield Village?
So it's very comparable with Mayfield Village. They have a lot of options over there.
We have a brand-new aquatic center, so that's what I'm asking.
Yes. So if you look at the Parkview pool, they have a family of 2, 3, 4. A family of 5 would roughly be $115 for a family of 5, and every person after that is $15 more. So that compares to our 110. An individual, they're saying a student would be 40, an adult would be 45. That would compare to our 45. Their senior would compare to our senior.
Okay, thank you.
And then the cabana rates that you have here, are they for the day, for the hour, like per hours?
Yeah, that would
So-
be for a day, correct.
Okay. And that will be on a reserve? You'll have the option to call and reserve, or go online and reserve?
You would call and reserve or go online, whatever.
Yeah, the new website, I think,
Yeah.
will allow that.
Correct.
Okay. Mrs. Tressi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Is that correct that Highland Heights does not allow the school district? You have NA in there.
So what that is they offer both resident and school district, but I think the NA is they don't offer a second half pass for school district residents, only the full season pass.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Monaco?
Sean, how are we doing with staffing? Are we,
You know what, we're gonna have 100% new staff. Everyone is gone, they either moved on to a full-time job or internship or went elsewhere. So, we are doing good right now. There's a lifeguard class going on in Mayfield Village that we're working together with them on. But we're looking at probably, if we had our way, we'd want about 10 more guards to make life comfortable, so.
what are we gonna have? Are we able to fill those hours, or we would have to kind of cut the hours back a little bit?
So, our old staff, had first-year guard, second-year guard, third, fourth, fifth, some people that have been there for a while. Our new staff now is mostly first-year guards, second-year guards. They're young. It's good and bad. You don't have to worry about bad habits to break, but, are they gonna be a workhorse? If there's 10 of you up here on the board, one of you may wanna work 10 hours a week, and the other said, give me 40, give me 50. And so we just have to figure out what that's gonna be. And so that's why having additional guards always helps. One of the things that'll take some of the pressure off is not having that public swim lesson. So there's 4 days a week that we're, this year, not gonna handle in the mornings.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could, on that note, Mr. Monaco, I want to introduce Mike Trivisano, who is the new facility manager for our new building. I don't know if council has had a chance to meet him or
Mike, you can
talk to
come
him.
up to the
but
podium and introduce yourself.
Speaking of new employees, that was a good segue, so.
Thanks, guys. Nice to formally meet everybody. Heard a lot of good things about everyone, so really excited to get in there and get everything rolling.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any further questions for Mr. Ward about the pool prices or any of the things that he spoke about this evening? Gentlemen, are you done with everything? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mr. DeJohn, second by Mrs. Tressi. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. This meeting has now been adjourned. We'll take a 5-minute break before the council meeting. Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone to the June 12th council meeting of the City of Mayfield Heights. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Balestria. Mr. DeJohn.
Here.
Mr. Mano.
Here.
Mr. Monaco.
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Here.
Mrs. Snyder.
Here.
Mrs. Teresi.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If anyone here this evening has a public request form to speak this evening, please bring it up to me so I can call on you. Thank you. Next, we will have the approval of the minutes of our May 8th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting. I hope everyone has had time to read these minutes over. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Mano, and second by Mr. Monaco. Are there any suggested changes, amendments, or deletions to those minutes?
I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
can't-
you weren't here.
I was not here. It's been so
So,
long.
moved by Mrs. Teresi, second by Mr.
Monaco.
Monaco. Hold on, I'm writing this here. Okay. Now, are there any changes or deletions to those minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain?
We have 2 abstentions. Thank you. These minutes have now been approved as written. Next, we'll move to the approval of the minutes of our May 8th council meeting. I hope everyone's had time to read these minutes over. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Tressi and second by Mr. DeJohn. Are there any changes or deletions or amendments to these minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain?
And we have 2 that were not present. Thank you. These minutes have now been approved. We will not be able to approve the minutes of the May 22nd council meeting at this time, so we will approve it next meeting. Are there any comments or questions from council or correspondence? Mr. DeJohn, I knew
real
I'd look to you.
Real quick, I had opted out of NOPEC and did it legally by writing to them, and they then got back, the illuminating company, First Energy, got back to me and said that they never got that opt-out notification. So if any of the residents out there are opting out of NOPEC, they should really call NOPEC and also call whatever company they went with. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from any members of council? Next, we will go reports of officers, starting with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. We have a pretty long agenda, so I'm going to make this quick. We have a couple new businesses opening their doors. On June 16th, Extreme Compound Gym and Fitness Center located in Golden Gate Plaza will open. It's a center, the center offers personal training, state-of-the-art gym equipment, boxing room, group classes, and it provides classes for all fitness levels. And they also have agreed to offer any resident of Mayfield Heights a $10 off discount on the current publicly advertised membership rate with proof of residency. And then also Pure Hockey will move into Salon Lofts, the former Danny Vase store. Pure Hockey is obviously a hockey equipment retailer. They have 60 stores in 19 states. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the mayor? Moving to Director of Law, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have a short report. Couple of things. I wanted to note that I received word that the city was successful in the lawsuit, D'Annunzio versus the city of Mayfield Heights, regarding a variance request to install a fence higher than permitted by the city ordinances. The court found that council had denied the variance request, and the court found that the fence was erected without a permit and that the fence was higher than permitted by the ordinances, and therefore, council was justified in denying the variance because there was no practical difficulty. So that was the first thing. Secondly, on the agenda tonight, there are two resolutions regarding Juicy Seafood. The first one is number 2023-51. If council determines it wants to deny the variance that has been requested, and there's been a lot of discussion on this, if council determines it wants to deny the variance, it should vote yes on number 51. If council determines it wants to approve the variance, it should vote yes on 2023-52. And if there's any questions, I will be here. That's all.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Murphy? Director of Finance, Mrs. Fagan.
Thank you. I have no formal report this evening.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to reports of committees, commissions, and boards, beginning with the Building Committee, Mr. Monaco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Finance and Audit Committee, Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, or President, I'm sorry. I do not have a report this evening.
Thank you. Legislative Committee, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. The Legislative Committee meeting is scheduled on June 19th at 5:30. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss naming rights to government buildings and property legislation introduced by Councilman Mr. DeJohn, Ordinance 2023-15. Thank you.
Thank you for getting that meeting scheduled. All right, Public Works and Service, Mr. Balestre is absent this evening, so Mrs. Tressi, do you have a report?
I have no report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Recreation and Parks Committee, Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report.
Safety and Transportation, Mrs. Tressi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no formal report, but this evening we have 2023-57, which is the approval of the purchase for intersection cameras and jail lobby cameras. That is on the agenda for this evening.
Thank you. Board of Zoning Appeals, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. There are several BZA items on the agenda tonight. Council should have the meeting minutes and a letter from the ABR. BZA Chair, Mr. Kramer, is here to address any questions that the minutes did not. I encourage all applicants present to address council during the public portion of this meeting. The BZA will meet here in council chambers tomorrow at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. And Planning Commission, Mr. Balestre is not here this evening, so Mayor, do you have a report?
I have no formal report, but we do have a meeting a week from tonight, and that is for the final site plan for the Verizon store.
All right, thank you. We will now proceed to the public portion. Each person will be allotted 5 minutes to speak, with a maximum of 30 minutes allotted for the entire public portion. If you are here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. However, please note that this is not an opportunity for debate. If you would like to be heard this evening and have not done so already, please fill out the form located at the public entrance of the council chamber. And during the public portion, I will call each person wishing to speak up to the podium. Please state your name and address for the record and speak clearly into the microphone. It is now 7:23, and I will open up the public portion. First person is Lisa Weiner.
Hello again, everybody. Lisa Weiner, 7405 Rockwell Court, Mentor, Ohio, and I'm here on behalf of Juicy Seafood. I've been before you guys a few times.
And every time I've stressed the need for the signage to be disproportionate to the other signs, but this time I'm going to address why they didn't get a permit to begin with. I usually handle all their permits. I did Warrensville Heights, I've done Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I've done other sites for them. So they assume I'm handling everything. And this one, I dropped the ball. When I realized that the sign had gone up, they thought it was all taken care of. The landlord approved the sign. I was in the middle of, parents had an accident. I was in the middle of becoming a full-time caregiver for an immobile mother. And I'm not looking for sympathy with it, but I was out of pocket for a couple months. As soon as I realized the sign went up, I went to the city. I made application. We got our denial letter because we didn't conform. We were 40 square feet over, and went through the process of going before the Board of Zoning Appeals. They approved the sign, and then I came before you guys. But it was never my client's intention not to get permits, not to abide by the city. It was merely they assumed I handled it, and I wasn't. You know, other things took priority at the moment. I became a 24/7 caregiver, and everything went to the wayside. Boards I sat on, things I do like this that I do pro bono for my clients, they took a backseat. So I'm hoping that you'll see, you know, that the variance we're requesting makes them proportionate to adjacent signs, and it wasn't that we had the intention of not getting a permit to begin with or not complying with the city. So thank you.
Thank you. That's the only form that I have. Is there anybody else that would like to be heard? You could just come up, that's fine.
All right, hello, everyone.
Just speak into the microphone, please, and just state your name and address.
My name's Jason Bokel. Address is 814 Tioga Trail, Willoughby, Ohio, 44094.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm here with my brother Alex. We are here for a Board of Zoning appeal. We're doing a single-family, essentially a new home, started as a renovation on Iroquois here in Mayfield Heights. Alex will live there. Him and I are the general contractors. So our zoning appeal is pertaining to a setback allowance for a covered porch roof. The way that our structure has landed with some existing conditions is that we have asked this Board of Zoning Appeals to do 7 feet away from that detached garage rather than the 10-foot for some specific site conditions. One being an existing foundation existing foundation that stayed, in addition to an existing detached garage that was one of the few things we salvaged from the property. We didn't really realize this until we had framed the bulk of the structure. We did an addition and then replaced the remainder of the structure and saw a real nice opportunity for a covered porch on the back corner of the property. And so all I can say is I appreciate everybody's time and consideration, and we are, our goal is to really produce a definitely above average single-family home in Mayfield Heights here. So we're looking forward to rounding the corner and finishing it this year.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard? Okay. So it's 7:28, and I will close the public portion. We'll begin with resolution number 2023-47, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2023-47, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Jason Bokel and Alexander Bokel, 1317 Iroquois Avenue, a variance to construct a covered porch on the rear of the house closer than 10 feet to the garage. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 861-02-026. Second reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn, second by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Monaco.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
moved by Mr. DeJohn, and second by Mr. Mano. This was a 5-0 vote in favor of granting a variance to construct a covered porch at this residence. The applicant imposed a practical difficulty on this property. And Mrs. Sabetta, is there anything else you would like to add?
Thank you. No, I was absent. And if you have any questions, as I have said, Mr.
We have
Kramer
Mr.
is
Kramer
here.
here. Does any member of council, Mr. Kramer, do you want to step up to the podium? Do you have a question for him?
Yes, I do. I just want to know whether or not there was provisions taken for fire protection in the construction of that porch.
Yes, that was taken as part of a consideration both in this case and the second garage case. Both times the issue was raised, and the building commissioner will address it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer, for being here this evening. Are there any, Mr. Monaco?
The question that I have that somebody can answer is, how far is the post from the corner of the garage, and how far is the roof overhang from the corner of the garage?
I'm sorry, Mr. Monaco, I stupidly forgot my hearing aids. So if you would read a little louder, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, the question is, how far is the post from the corner of the garage, and how far is the roof overhang from the corner of the garage?
I believe it's from the corner of the roof, the distance measured. Is that your question?
From the corner of the overhang.
Right.
So the post is how far from it? Do we know?
I don't remember, very frankly.
Could you?
The,
Mr. Buckle, if you can come up to the podium. Thank you.
Our post will land, if you measure perpendicular to the structure, our post will land about 10 inches, between 10 to 12 inches in from the outer tip of the roof.
Okay.
So we'll be inset a little bit because of the overhang.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, this resolution has been approved. Moving to resolution number 2023-48, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2023-48, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Jerome Terrence on behalf of Antonio and Monique Steele, 1358 Washington Boulevard, a variance to construct a detached garage in the rear yard 11 feet from the house. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 861-14-076. Second reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Teresi, second by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second.
second by Mrs. Sabetta. This resolution was a 5-0 vote in favor of granting this application to build a garage closer to the house in which the board saw a practical difficulty. Does any member have any comments or questions this evening? Mr.
I have another
Monaco.
question. Maybe somebody can answer for me. How far is the distance between the garage and the house, not the bump out? Because I know it's 11 feet to the bump out, but how far is actually to the house itself? Does anybody know?
Mr. Monaco,
I'm sorry.
I apologize for getting the hearing aids again. Would you repeat?
The question is, there is a bump out in the back of the house.
Yes.
And the distance between the end of the bump out to the garage is 11 feet.
Right.
But what is the difference, the distance between the back of the garage to the house itself, not including the bump out?
I don't, once again, I don't have that number in my head. I know that it was, the trees were the major factor which caused the location to be placed there. And I think that, as the ordinance does recall, I think 6 or 7 feet variance. That's from memory from a month ago.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monaco.
Are there any further questions? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Monaco.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Resolution 2023-48 has been approved. Resolution number 2023-49, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2023-49, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Dan Buttry, Verizon Global Real Estate, on behalf of Verizon and First Mainland Properties, 5870 Mayfield Road, a variance to increase the maximum number of parking spaces on the property from 15 to 39. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 861-28-046. Second reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Monaco.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mr. DeJohn. This was a 5-0 vote. The motion was granted by the BZA, noting that the site of the location is very narrow, and an increase for the parking spaces was needed at this location. I think the applicant is here this evening. Does any member of council have any questions? Did you want to?
Oh, on the applicant. I thought you said is the.
Oh, no. Thank you. Okay. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Monaco.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Resolution number 2023-49 has been approved. Resolution number 2023-50, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2023-50, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Dan Buttry, Verizon Global Real Estate, on behalf of Verizon and First Mainland Properties, 5870 Mayfield Road, a variance to exceed the maximum allowable parking lot width by 8.35 feet. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 861-28-046. Second reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mr. DeJohn. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Monaco.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Due to the narrowing of the site, this motion also was granted with a 5-0 vote, seeing that the applicant had a practical difficulty. Does any member of council have any questions pertaining to this resolution? Okay, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Monaco.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, this motion has been carried. Moving to resolution number 2023-51, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2023-51, a resolution reversing the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Wing Wee Juicy Seafood on behalf of Cosmo Eastgate Limited, 1479 Som Center Road, a variance to install 140 square feet of W1 signage on the front wall of the building. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 862-29-018, and denying said variance. Second reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mr. Monaco.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Before I get into the discussion, just reiterate what you said before.
Okay.
So everybody's got it clear.
This resolution, if adopted, would deny the variance requested by Juicy Seafood. The following resolution, if adopted, would grant the variance requested by Juicy Seafood.
So we're voting,
If you want to grant the variance, you
Vote.
vote this down. If you want to deny the variance, you vote in
yes.
favor
got
of
it.
it.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Sabetta.
I was at this meeting, so I do have something to reiterate. You've heard from the applicant's broker, and you have the BZA minutes. The sign was installed without a permit. The applicant requests a 40-square-foot variance where 100 square feet is allowed, and stating that visibility is the practical difficulty. And it was a 3-2 vote to recommend, and 5 members were present. The sign still needs ABR approval. I will be voting for the revision. I'll be
Reverse.
voting yes.
Reversal.
Yes. What I say.
And
Oh, thank you. Mr. DeJohn.
I just want the council to keep in mind that this sign is no bigger than the other signs in the shopping center. Although our corridor manual changed that, we should, keep that in mind. I do understand that Mr. Murphy said that we can't grandfather it in, but, the applicant forgot about it. We should have a little bit of compassion. The shopping center owner doesn't have any problem with it. And again, it's no bigger than the other signs that currently are on the facade of the shopping center. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mano.
I have no problem with the visibility on that sign. That sign can be seen from the street with no problem. And before that place opened, the sign that was in the window that kept saying "coming soon" was highly visible from the street. So visibility of the sign, I don't think is an issue.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Monaco, yeah, okay. All right, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
No?
Mr. Monaco.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
No. So this is a 5-2 vote. So the, I'm sorry, 4-2 vote. So the variance is denied,
No.
No.
or approved.
No, in order to reverse the Board of Zoning Appeals, you need 5 votes. You
Right,
only
so
got
you can't.
4.
Okay.
So this, oddly enough, even though it was 4-2, you need a supermajority in order to pass it, so this resolution fails.
Wells, okay.
Which means
Explain.
Which
please.
means it fails.
now they're allowed to have it.
No,
Or
well,
not.
the next one is to grant the variance. And if, today is the deadline, if it is not acted on by council today, then the decision of BZA is continued, upheld.
Can I just ask, at the last meeting, what the vote was? It was 3, or,
At the last meeting, there were 4 members present, and the vote was
3 to 1.
3-1
3 to
to
1.
grant the variance.
right, so this
Right.
evening, we had 2 people that were here last meeting that voted to grant it, but they voted not to grant it tonight? That's what's confusing.
Yes.
This was a 5-1 vote, correct?
No, it's 3-1.
4-2 tonight.
Right. But last meeting, it was 3-1.
Wait a minute, let me pull the minutes.
That's what, there wasn't enough people.
No, it was put on second reading, wasn't it?
We know. We did not vote last meeting,
Not last
No.
meeting, 2 meetings ago.
Oh, 2 meetings ago.
and
Well,
Don and
I
I
can
were
still-
not here.
We may have
Right,
those.
so
Not here.
that was May 8th meeting.
So those
Here it
minutes
is.
are right here.
At the, coming.
It's a 3-2. It's a 3-2 vote. The no votes for Monaco and Teresi.
She wasn't here. Gail wasn't here.
It was.
For that meeting, she was here.
Yeah, you're right, 3-2. I'm
3-2.
sorry, it was 3-2.
Okay.
Last meeting, it was 3-1.
Right.
That's what
That's
you
what
had
you
asked
did,
about,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It wasn't
mhm.
2 meetings ago. It was last meeting.
And what was it, last meeting?
Didn't vote on
You
it.
didn't vote. It just went right into second. Right, because there weren't enough people. Okay. Yeah,
It was on readings, nobody
because you didn't have a quorum, did you?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
had a
they
quorum.
did.
You did have a quorum? We had
All
four.
right, we'll move to resolution number 2023-52. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2023-52, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Wing Wee Wei Juicy Seafood on behalf of Cosmo Eastgate Limited, 1479 Som Center Road, a variance to install 140 square feet of W1 signage on the front wall of the building. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 862-29-018. Second reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Monaco, second by Mr. DeJohn. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Monaco.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes,
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Monaco and
Move.
second by Mr. DeJohn. Any questions or comments about this resolution? Mr. DeJohn?
Just one comment, that if this does pass, they still have to go to the Architectural Board of Review, so there could still be something there, some changes to that sign. So even if, we vote this, the approval of this, it will have to go to the Architectural Board of Review, and it could be some major changes to the sign, so. That's all. And,
Mr. Murphy?
Oh,
Oh,
no, no, no.
and explain to us our vote on this one, Mr. Murphy,
Okay.
please.
This vote is to confirm the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals. The Board of Zoning Appeals voted to recommend granting the variance, and this resolution would confirm that grant and would grant the variance for the sign.
okay, thank you. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta.
No.
Mr. Mano.
No.
Mrs. Teresi.
no,
Mr. Monaco.
No.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. So this is a 2 in favor and 4 opposed.
So it fails.
So this fails. Okay. Resolution number 2023-53, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution number 2023-53, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Stryker Medical for the purchase of 2 automated external defibrillators for use at the Mayfield Heights Aquatic and Community Center and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn and second by Mrs. Tressi. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
yes,
Mr. Monaco.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. DeJohn and second by Mrs. Tressi. All members of council should have received a memo from Stryker Medical for the purchase of 2 automated external defibrillators for the Aquatic Center for the total cost of $5,561.64. This purchase is not available through the state purchasing program, but totals less than $25,000, so it can be authorized by the mayor. This is a necessity, and I encourage the passage of this legislation this evening. Any council questions?
I was just
Mrs.
wondering
Tracy.
if we,
Oh.
thank you.
Stop, hold on.
Just
Mrs.
was wondering
Strauss.
if we can add one to the council chambers, maybe right behind me, so, just in
God
case.
forbid.
None of us are jumping
Yeah.
up to get it. No, my question is, how close will these be to that pool area, or will they be more inside the building?
Mr. Ward?
There will be one in the first aid station in the pool, and there'll be one when you walk in the front door of the facility, right, I'm calling it the island, but the kind of the heartbeat of the facility, there'll be one right there on that wall, so centrally located.
Thank you. Anything further? All right, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, this resolution has now been adopted. Resolution number 2023-54, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2023-54, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Uline for the purchase of 9 bike racks for use at the Mayfield Heights Aquatic and Community Center and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Mano and second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Moved by Mr. Monaco, second by Mr. Mano. The Uline Company has sent a proposal for 9 5-loop bike racks for a total cost of $4,641. These bike racks are for the use of the Aquatic and Community Center. Are there any questions? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
No.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, this resolution has now been adopted. Moving to resolution number 2023-55 and resolution number 23-56. The mayor has withdrawn both of these sponsorships to this resolution. So we will move to resolution number 2023-57.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2023-57, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with I2C Technologies for the purchase of intersection cameras and jail lobby cameras for use by the Mayfield Heights Police Department and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Tressi and second by Mr. DeJohn. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn and second by Mr. Mano. The police chief has requested and investigated the purchase of necessary cameras at various intersections, as well as the jail and the lobby of the police department. The total cost is $125,795. This is state bid pricing. The city would own the equipment without monthly or annual fees with this purchase. And the jail and lobby would include within the 32 cameras to replace our current system. Chief Mealy is here this evening. If any member of council has any questions for him. Or Mrs. Tressi, because you had the meeting.
The chief did a great presentation on the cameras and the visibility and the span in order to see vehicles at each intersection, and there are 3 intersections that will be involved. I highly recommend that we approve this for the city.
Thank you. Okay, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, this resolution has been approved. Moving to resolution number 2023-58, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2023-58, a resolution authorizing and approving change management number 051D to the agreement with the Albert M. Higley Company for the construction of the Mayfield Heights Aquatic Center and the Community Center and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Mano
Second?
and second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second?
second by Mrs. Sabetta. The council has determined that we would like to change the material being used from asphalt to concrete, and the size of the sidewalk would now be 8 feet as opposed to 6 feet. The cost of change is from $42,000 to $110,000, which is a difference of $68,534. We spoke about this earlier in our committee of the whole meeting, and we talked about the safety features and the reasoning for going to concrete as opposed to asphalt. Does any member of council have any further questions or comments with this resolution? Seeing none? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
No.
Mrs. Teresi?
No.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. This is a 5-2 vote, and this motion has been approved, or 4-2. Thank you. 1/2 many. All right, moving to resolution number 2023-59, Mr. Murphy.
Just one quick note, the prior resolution only had 4 votes, so it would not pass as an emergency. So it's not effective until
For 30
30 days.
days.
Resolution 2023-59, a resolution authorizing the mayor to amend the contract with Magus LLC for the purchase and installation of a pavilion for use at the Mayfield Heights Aquatic and Community Center to add a metal roof to the structure and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Mano
Second?
and second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Monaco, second by Mrs. Sabetta. This was a suggested change of materials to a metal roof on our pavilion. Some of council requested for the pavilion to look similar in appearance to the Aquatic and Community Center design. The cost for the modification would be $3,630. Are there any comments from council or questions? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
No.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. This motion has been approved. Moving to resolution number 2023-60, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2023-60, a resolution authorizing and approving change management number 027 to the agreement with Albert M. Higley Company for the construction of the Mayfield Heights Aquatic Center and the Community Center and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Monaco,
No.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second?
second by Mrs. Sabetta. All members should have received the change order request. This is a change order to authorize additional money for various revisions to the electrical and plumbing systems at the new Aquatic and Community Center. The additional costs are not to exceed $66,130.66. I'm going to turn this over,
Yeah. No,
turn
go
this
ahead.
over to Mr. Trotta or Mr. Ward to explain what this is about. Does this have anything to do with what we talked about earlier in the committee of the whole meeting? Okay.
So there are 4 items that are part of this consideration, which the first one is we needed to upgrade the panel in the existing service center to support the electrical infrastructure for the gate and the lights. We switched it from being managed from the new aquatic building to the service center. So this is a replacement panel to handle the loading and to leave amp capacity for future need for the service center. So that's one of the items. Any questions on that one?
Mrs. Stressy?
Why did you feel that you had to change it?
It was a direction from the service center and our steering committee through the process. It was led by that direction. That seemed like the best way to manage the gate, and everything was right from the service center. It just didn't have a panel that could handle that load, so it had to be upgraded.
Mr. Brunello, do you know anything about this? Yeah, I do. Can you come up and talk, please?
So Chris is discussing the panel that was at the service, or at the Salpin garage was too small. So in order to accommodate the light poles, like he's saying, the gate, and to have some additional room for the exhaust system that we needed to put back in, we needed to upgrade the panel. So it just wasn't big enough for all the new things we had. That's really it.
And how much did that cost out of the $66,000?
That was done early on.
Yeah, those numbers for the specifics of what that additional cost would be, we'd have to get back to you on that. I don't know the specifics of that.
Okay, maybe we should place this in second reading, but let's hear about the other 4 items.
Sure. The second item was the addition of sump pumps were added to the pumps, the pump pit for the slide tower and the pump pit in the building for the pools, for the drainage, to make sure that we had the ample capacity to pump the water that was in the ground into the system, the sanitary system. So it was to assist with that. This is the electrical for these pumps. It was determined by the construction and design team that we needed to add this to both of those pits. So it was something that was not in the original drawings, but was added along the way as a need for the project.
Any questions about that one from council? Next. Thanks.
The third item, which is a good majority of the cost of this total package, was adding lighting into the pool. We had it in, then we took it out, and we had it in, we took it out. It was a decision on should it be in there, and it was part of our sort of initial value engineering list of an element that we did not include in the drawings at the time when it was bid. And then it was determined that we wanted to have the 27 lights in the 2 different pools so that there could be lighting at evening time or dusk time when needed in the future. So that includes the 27 fixtures, the materials, the labor, and The labor for that one is, or the materials is about $18,000, and then about $5,000 to $6,000 for the labor. So it's a good portion of this number.
Are there any questions about the lighting? Okay, and the fourth item?
And the last item is just miscellaneous upgrades to the panels in some feeders and some GFCI breakers that through code review and other different approaches with subcontractors, whatever, and our engineers, just modifications. There were some credits and there were some additions for this item, but these are just a lot of miscellaneous breaker and different upgrades that are required by code.
Mrs. Fagan, is this part of, do we have the money to do this?
Yes, we do.
So it's been part of what you set aside, or is it extra money that we need to come up with? I don't know how this all works.
We borrowed a full 33 million. Everything above and beyond that is coming from monies that we have already accumulated. Part of that is coming from the other funds that we're closing out. Part of it is coming from grant monies. Part of it is the issue 9 money that's already accumulated for this purpose that we won't need for debt payment until next year.
Okay. Mrs. Tressi?
Mrs. Fagan, did you say part of this would be issue 9 money that we're going to receive next year?
No, monies that we have already accumulated since it started. We had 40% of those monies going aside for public facilities, so that money has been accumulating. We'll use that towards the pay down of the bonds when the bond payments start coming due.
I know it's hard to say, but do you foresee anything else changing within the next month, other than the money that you spoke about earlier with the catch basin that we might have to do?
For the whole project?
Yeah.
There is a list of change management items, and they are being brought forward as they're, needing approval. And right now, this is the list, but there are additional items that we vet. All of these, our engineers, everyone kind of researches the numbers, the backup, the costs, but there may be a few other items that are, Higley is the one that manages that list, and, know what additional ones there may be.
Mrs. Tressi?
Mrs. Fagan, do you have a running list of all of these additions along with where we started? So
I
you
do,
could
and I
give
can
us a
share
number?
that with you first thing tomorrow morning. Absolutely.
So, because I look at some of the resolutions where it'll say, 30 million, and then we're at 34,898,000. So I'd like to know the number with all of the additions that we've done.
Absolutely.
And then all of the items that we've purchased that were under the $25,000 that the mayor added, that all pertain to the project, because that would be, the bike racks or whatever, all of those things really are part of the aquatic project, so we should know.
Yes, they are. And that
All
is
of the
all listed
costs.
on the spreadsheet I'll send you in the morning.
Thanks.
By vendor, and then all of the self-purchased items. So yes, all that is on there.
That we will, I think council will then have a whole list of, today it's 34,700, and then we do another resolution, it's 34,800. So if we could just have something, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Trotta? Mr.
I'm going to
Monaco?
ask a question. Mr. Trotta, are any public pools in Mayfield Village, Beechwood, that do not have lighting? I don't know of any pools that do not have lighting. So, the fact that you're saying that you didn't include it in the price, it's really puzzling me. It's really bothering me, because that should have been included in the original price. And when you say code updates, the code isn't changed. If it requires a GFI receptacle somewhere, it should have been on a drawing. There shouldn't be anything extra.
Which would you like me to answer first?
Both.
In any order.
The pool lighting is an option, and I didn't take a sampling of all the pools around on whether they have lighting or not. We look at the pool hours, and typically they're not open. This pool is not open in the evening time, but because this is a community center that has this unique attachment with the pool, that we think, number one, for safety, but for aesthetics, to be out in that outdoor living space and to be looking out in the pool that's lit, it was sort of an option that we elected for. But yeah, there are plenty of pools that don't have lights, and whether the lights were in the drawings or they're added now, the price would be the same for the lights.
I respond.
Mr. Monaco.
I can appreciate that, but we know that there's a community center close by there, and we know that there's a possibility of somebody renting the pool at a later date. And I think, we retained you as an expert, and you should have told us that lighting was needed from the very beginning, so we would have known what the price was. Here we are, you're coming back to us, and you're asking for additional price every other week or so, and this thing is getting out of hand.
Well, I think we have established contingencies on this project, and the contingencies, the owner contingencies, the construction contingencies, escalation, and all the other contingencies are meant for these purposes. At the time, we had to fast-track the drawings. Remember, we had to fast-track all the drawings to get them out and get them bid. The decision about the lighting was not made at that time. If it was made, then it would have been in the drawings, and the price would have been in there. It was made after our drawings went out, and so it's an additional cost now, but it would have been part of the original drawings if it was decided sooner. I didn't have control of that or our team. It was a decision between the city, the steering committee, and WTI, the pool consultant, and it just didn't occur when we got the drawings out.
Mr. Trotter, all I have to say, we relied on your expertise for those, okay? And in my opinion, you failed us. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Mrs. Tressi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Trotter, do we have a maintenance contract with mainline pools?
I do
you
not know that, sorry.
Sean, do you know if we have a maintenance contract already? I'm sure there's a one-year warranty or whatever, but do we or will we have a maintenance contract for the pool?
I'm not sure about that. I'll be something I have to look into.
Yes, Mr. Murphy?
I don't recall any contract.
Oh, yeah, we haven't brought
No.
any contract to you.
Council hasn't approved
So I
any
just
contract.
knew Mainline is out there doing the pool. I wondered if that was going to be like another addition to.
Hopefully we can.
Hopefully.
I-
Mayor?
I mean, with the facility supervisor and learning all the systems there, hopefully that's not something we need.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. It was just off the top of my head. Sorry.
You're fine. Okay, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
No.
Mr. Monaco.
No?
Mr. DeJohn.
No.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, so it's 3-3, so this fails.
Correct.
This resolution has not been passed. I will turn the meeting over to Gail Tressi for the next resolution, as my husband is the SRO.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A resolution 2023-61, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair. Resolution 2023-61, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Mayfield City Schools, continuing the School Resource Officer Program and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second.
second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Abstain?
Mr. Monaco.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mr. DeJohn. Okay. This resolution is to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Mayfield City Schools to continue the SRO School Resource Officer Program in Mayfield Heights. Mayor, do you have anything you want to add? Any discussion? We currently have Mr. Snyder at Lander School and Leskovic at the middle school, and hopefully they'll continue in those positions this year. Any other discussion? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Abstain?
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes, this motion has been approved and adopted. Back to Mrs. Council President Snyder.
Thank you, Mrs. Tracy. You did a great job.
It's been a while since I've had to do that.
Resolution number 2023-62, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2023-62, a resolution adopting the alternative tax budget information format for the City of Mayfield Heights, State of Ohio for the fiscal year 2024 and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mrs. Tracy, second by Mr. DeJohn. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Move.
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sabetta and second by Mr. DeJohn. I'm going to refer this to Mrs. Fagan to explain this resolution.
Thank you. This is the beginning of the budgetary process for the upcoming year. The county requires that we pass the tax budget every year. This is by no means the operating budget. This is just the required document for the county. We are required to have it to the county by July 20th, and it needs to be passed by council by July 14th or July 12th. And that's why we're trying to get to you now before recess.
Okay, thank you. Does any member of council have any comments or questions for Mrs. Tracy?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just have a question, Mrs. Fagan, on the miscellaneous deposit fund, which is number 607. Started out at 125 and it's 5,000? We're missing
I always
100.
make the assumption when looking at that one that all those miscellaneous deposits we have on hand are going to be returned. And no, they're not, but since it's not really our money and it's money that's going to be a deposit, is going to be returned at some point, I always make the assumption that it's going to be returned during the year.
Thank you.
Any further questions from council? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, this resolution has been adopted. We'll move to ordinances, beginning with ordinance number 2023-14.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ordinance number 2023-14, an ordinance amending the original appropriations ordinance number 2022-28 for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Mayfield Heights, State of Ohio, of the fiscal year ending December 31, 2023, as previously amended by ordinance number 2023-06, specifically the transfer and supplemental appropriations of funds in various accounts and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn and second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn and second by Mrs. Sabetta. This ordinance includes inter-fund transfers. The explanation of transfers are outlined in the attached ordinance. Mrs. Fagan, is there anything else you would like to add to
Yeah,
this?
I would just say that, as I've always stated, the budget is not etched in stone. It is a living document, and as we go through the year, we come up with areas where monies need to be moved to be directed to areas that need attention, just such as the jail and lobby cameras, items such as that. So this is the second amendment for this year. I wholly anticipate one more before the end of the year.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? You don't? Okay. All right, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, ordinance number 2023-14 has been approved. We will now move on to motions, beginning with motion A. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. Motion to authorize the Service Department to solicit bids for rock salt for the 2023-2024 season.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn, second by Mr. Mano. Fortunately, it's that time of year again. We have to talk about rock salt. Ugh. I know, it did today. Is there any questions or comments from council? All right, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, motion A has been adopted. Is there any new business from council? Mrs. Sabetta?
I would like to take a moment to thank the Service Department for their new plantings and beautification to the Catalano Island, dedicated to fallen patrolman Nick Catalano. Your care and service is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further from council? Just note that the parade and the home days is next weekend, and I know Mr. Ward will be reaching out to members of council for volunteer time, and also if you need a vehicle for the parade. Okay? All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sabetta. And
Second.
second by Mr. DeJohn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all. Meeting has now been adjourned.